well-wishers, good friends, acquaintances, and from all different parts of the sports world. Tons of listeners. And I know one of his good friends who's worked with him off and on over the years is Teddy Covers, and Teddy was a mainstay on Lotus Broadcasting shows for a long time. And Ted Sevransky's got with Cofield and Company. Teddy, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right, Steve. How about yourself?
I'm good. These are not easy circumstances, and just for the audience, Dave's here. Like Dave is still good. But this is one of those rare opportunities where Dave sent out his prognosis, and I was thinking, you know what? We need to talk about Dave Cokin while he's here, so maybe you can hear it and see it. So I thought it was important to reach out to you because I know you go way back with Dave. So I hope you're okay. I feel bad for everyone to bring it on. I don't want to trivialize this and make everyone speak about something that is not pleasant. But you doing okay?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're all going to get there. That's the bottom line. Is you're born on this earth with the death sentence, and unfortunately, Dave has caught up with him. Now he's still here. You talked about it. At Dave Cokin on Twitter. He can't really talk at this stage, but Dave can most assuredly read. His brain works perfectly well, and he appreciates all the messages. He's been getting an outpouring of support, as he deserves, as a guy who legitimately, you talk about the Mount Rushmore of sports broadcasters in town. Dave's on it, I mean, who do you put? Dave, Lee, Pete. That's probably my top two, and we can argue about who the rest of them.
That was absolutely a start, and Lee gave him some early opportunities on the gambling front. Teddy, when did you first become aware of Dave, and then when did you know him locally?
So Dave, when I moved into Vegas in 1998, and Dave was one of the establishment handicappers when I came out here. He was someone who I didn't want to like. I came out here with a big chip on my shoulder, and if you knew me the first 5-10 years I was in this town, you're probably aware of that. But I came out here, and everyone who's ever done anything has done it wrong, and I'm going to show you guys how to sports bet. And Dave was like, "Yeah, okay, dude, settle down, dude." But with my attitude, Dave could have easily brushed me off. He could have easily been, all right, this guy's a jerk. But no, the very first time I remember specifically the very first time I met Dave Cokin. I sat down with him and had lunch with him. We did. It was called the Naked Lunch, and we did it at the Spearmint Rhino. Yep. And it was Steve Williams, Ballpark Frank, Dave Cokin, and then I was the guest.
Wow.
And after the show, Dave's like, "Yeah, let's sit down, let's have some lunch. Let's get to know." And he was as friendly and personable as could be from the first time I met him. Yep. And he's that way with everyone that knows him. Everyone that met Dave has the exact same things to say about him. He's just a good guy.
He's the king on radio. He loved doing remotes. He was comfortable anywhere. He's got a rich boxing background. We're in the coming days, we're going to talk to some boxing people because he was a really big part of boxing in Las Vegas. And he was one of those guys. The funny thing is, when you meet Dave, he can be really brash, and he's confident, and he will tell you if you're wrong, and he'll do that on radio. And if you're a little thin-skinned, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to have to learn how to deal with it. But ultimately, if you could talk a little bit and speak and you're well-rounded, Dave will talk to you about anything. And that what I found over the years, not only doing a show with him, but off the air and hanging out at remotes with him, is that this guy had done everything, had a take on everything, had so much experience. His stories from back in Providence are legendary. His stories of his early times in Vegas were awesome. As you talked to him, were you surprised? Just his wealth of knowledge, and it didn't have to be a deep conversation about sports.
No, again, I wanted him to be a jerk. I wanted to be someone I didn't like. And the whole, I came out here, I attacked the Feist organization, and he was with that, and Scott Spreitzer was with that, who was another guy who I turned out to, absolutely adore and be the, one of the best human beings that I know. There were a lot of guys that early on, I didn't like the people they were affiliated with. I didn't like the boiler rooms. I didn't like some of the stuff that was going on, and I took it out on them personally. And Cokin, again, he could have easily responded to me very negative, and instead, he was nothing but positive, and positive in all kinds of circumstances. "Hey, Dave, I'm struggling right now. What should I do?" He's there with an answer. "Hey, Dave, my cat's coughing up hairballs. What do I do?" Dave's got an answer. He was a very well-rounded individual, not someone who's just, and he is a very well-rounded individual, not someone who's just all about sports.
Teddy Covers, legendary handicapper around Las Vegas, and we're talking about Dave Cokin, who sent out a message a couple days ago on social media that he's not doing well. His time is not, real long coming up. We're all rooting for him. He's fought this for a year plus, so he's done well, and as Teddy said earlier, can't communicate like he used to, but he's very sharp. He's still posting all over Twitter and Facebook his takes. By the way, you slipped in a cat mention. Are you a cat guy?
Yeah, I'm a cat guy.
So am I.
That was one of the things that me and him got along with.
So
He'd come over. I usually, every time we have a barbecue, we come over and hang out with my cat.
Yep. I texted him the other day, and I was like, dude, I appreciate the fact that we're both crazy cat guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's one of those things that you're not supposed to say out loud, but I don't care.
I don't.
We're all cat guys. It is what it is.
I don't care either. Over the years as a listener, what did you appreciate about Dave as a talk show host?
Well, so Dave's ability. One of the things I used to love. We would do like a 1 hour show in the afternoon, and over the course of that hour, all right, you'd get Dave's takes on basically every game. You'd get an odds maker's take on where the money's come in every game. And it was quick. It was quick hitters. It was really good information. Dave, dating back to his Stardust line tenure, which was, legitimately legendary. He had one of the greatest seasons of all time that anyone's ever had ever. I forget if it was 2000 or 2001. It might have even been 99. But he had one of these years at the Stardust line where he gave out 3 picks again right when the line's open. And the guy hit like 80% for the season. It was insane. So his ability to break down games, and to this day, I respect Dave's opinion on, certainly when it comes to MLB, college football, the sports that he loves. Dave's opinion is second to none, second to few. He's a sharp dude. But his ability on air, both as, the one to have his dry personality and his wit come out, which I always like, but 2, to be able to get through a whole slate of games and give out valuable info on a bunch of them in a relatively short amount of time, I found that to be an extraordinary skill.
Talking to Teddy Covers, some stories about our buddy Dave Cokin, one of the legends here at ESPN Las Vegas, and Teddy mentioned going back from a history standpoint, this wasn't a town that had an all sports radio station, 30 years ago. That still wasn't spread across the country. The first station that went 24/7 did all sports was 1987 with WFAN. So Lee Pete and at times Jim Brown and Seat Williams and Cokin were around, and at the time they were on a 50,000 watt station. So it not only was local sports talk and designed for the local audience, the gambling audience, but it was regionally, it was a 50,000 watt station. So Teddy, when you heard that station, or if you were ever on it over the years, like the spread was really the West region.
Oh yeah, I did Stardust line for many years before the dust was imploded in one of the worst financial decisions for Boyd Gaming that we can think of. Nonetheless, the Stardust line was an extraordinary show. It really was back in the day. Every weekday with John Kelly hosting, and then weekend evenings, Friday. They would host the Stardust. They would host the contest on Friday nights. We'd have a 2-hour show Saturday and a 2-hour show Sunday. Coca did the Sunday show. I did the Saturday show. I had a variety of, but Steve Williams was always there with me. Back in the day, Mike Campanella I did it with for a time. Jorge Gonzalez I did it with for a time. There were a bunch of guys on the Saturday night show that I did for years. But the Stardust line with the 50,000 watt reach. That was the sports betting radio show, certainly on the West Coast, for the better part of a decade and a half. Obviously things change over time, but that 50,000 watt behemoth. We get callers from Seattle, which, they were listening live, which again, in the internet era, it doesn't seem like that big a deal, but back in the day, the reach that show had, the Stardust line was literally second to none.
Teddy Covers with us. I got to ask you a couple of current gambling theme storyline questions. One, I thought what happened the last 4 days or so with Bronny James and betting the draft was pure insanity. I'm reading after the first round yesterday, like there was a -160 number on him going yes to the Lakers at 17. There was a boatload of money. And there was a guy reported to have put $5,000 on Bronny James to be the number 1 pick. Then my partner Greg comes there and he's patting himself on the back like, I told you, Lakers at 55. I'm like, well, that was kind of the favorite. I mean, you've been watching this a long time. Because sports gambling has become so viral and popular stories can affect the way people bet. Storylines can affect the way people bet. There are bettable situations now where you're like, this is lunacy. I have to bet against this if I have the option.
So one of the things that's really interesting, when you think about the betting marketplace, all right, when it comes to sides and totals and first half across sports, all that is algorithmically derived. All right, there's databases you go through, whether it's live betting, whether it's betting before the game started, it doesn't matter. The numbers, not to say they're cemented, but there's a formula for coming up with those numbers, and the computers can spit out a decent number, and then the betting markets and then pop it into place, or the odds makers can put it in the right place. When it comes to future markets or draft betting markets or MVP, Conn Smythe Trophy markets, wherever you want to go, there is nothing like that. There is no algorithm for the bookmakers to put up numbers. So it's all opinion, and you'll see dramatic differences from one book to the next in these situations as the markets get pounded in the states into shape. And you'll also see what could be considered to be some bad numbers. Bronny James at 55 to LA, sure, sounds like a plan. But right. Bronny James at number 1, I'd have booked that all day long if I had a license.
Free money.
Teddy, for people, because Vegas is a real transient town, so a lot of people are always new to gambling. There's always this thing. You talk about an algorithm. How much of it is based on what they actually think is going to happen versus what they think people are going to bet?
So that's a really broad question. The answer is, a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B.
Right.
When you're talking about how bookmakers are going to put a number together, okay, there's, NFL week 1 numbers or NFL week, whatever number you want to talk about, tomorrow's baseball number, doesn't matter. The computer formula is going to spit out a number, all right, based on all the data. The odds makers are going to take that data and say, based for our clientele, based on the current shape of the market, let's slightly adjust it this way. And then that'll be their opening number, and then the markets move it from there. So it's not certainly there's a lot of hard math, a lot of algos in there, but there's also the human element of the odds maker and the bookmaker for any particular property, knowing their audience and adjusting the line off of the algorithm number into something that they think is likely to attract more two-way action.
Teddy, tell the Vegas audience where they can most easily find your stuff. Now, I did see you the other day doing a video on Dave Cokin with the Prez. So what's the best spots?
Yeah, you find me online, wagertalk.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Teddy_.